Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today, because we are in the middle of a 2x weekend for Void Shards, I thought what I could do is go over the best Void epics that are available in this game. Now, I know, right? We want to see the best Void legendaries. Those are the ones that everybody wants, but you know, so often it's really the Void epics that we really have to get. And you know, on Friday, which has already passed, and Saturday, which may have passed by the time you see this, a lot of you will have been pulling for Madame Serris, who was available as a 10x on this 2x, which is kind of cool because Madame Serris is one of the best epics in this game, but not number one. So what I thought I'd do is I'd go through 1 through 10 and talk about all the best epics that you can get for Void champions in this game. Now, obviously, there's more than just 10 that are available, and I definitely had to cut some out of my list. So, at the end of this video, if you guys go, hey, wait a minute, there's one champion that I thought you should have named that you didn't name, go ahead and let me know down below, because definitely there's a bunch of options here, right? I think I had on my list about 15 or 16 champions that I had to kind of decide between who was going to make my top 10 and who wasn't. So, you know, had to make some cuts, and I'm not even really happy with all of the cuts I made. I feel like there's definitely some others I could have looked at there. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the top 10. I really appreciate you coming by to watch this video, and if you enjoy it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. And of course, if you enjoyed today's music, we have that Soundstripe link down below in the pinned comment description of this video, along with my code Deadwood Jedi to save yourself 15%. And of course, if you're looking for account work, you can find that on my website, deadwoodjedi.com. Now, when we're talking about Void epics, I think we have to start with one of the OG best champions. I'm talking about Skullcrown. Absolutely bonkers good champion, one of the best nukers for Arena, and it really all comes down to her A1 ability. She has other skills, but that A1 skill is the one that really does it, and the reason why is she attacks all enemies, so it's an AoE skill, places an extra hit if the target has more than 50% HP. This means if she's doing her first attack, she's almost always going to be guaranteed 2 attacks, which is really strong because this has a very solid multiplier on it. She has a great base attack, and so this works really well. Now, it does work in conjunction with her passive ability here, which is really important to be able to factor in how you're going to use her in Arena. And this passive ability places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn every time their HP drops below 20%. Now, there is a cooldown on this, so it's not like you're going to be able to stay unkillable for the full fight, but what it does mean is you should be able to get at least 2 attacks in if you build your team correctly. Now, at this point in the game of Raid, there are plenty of counters to this, right? Buff strips are going to be a problem. If you bring any debuffs like freeze, stun, etc., that's going to be a problem as well. But generally, this is still a very strong option. Now, even if you don't bother to use this unkillable ability, you can always utilize just her A1. She's amazing in, what do you call it, blender teams where you have an ally attack ability, because her attack is AoE. It's very, very strong. So she's an incredibly good attack champion for a lot of people out there. In addition to that, she also has a weaken debuff as an AoE attack on her A2, which is also a very strong hit. And she has a aura for Arena battles. So if you don't have a speed lead for Arena, she can be a really, really good option for you. And this gives her a lot of utility in this game. Now, obviously, she has pretty low defense, pretty low base HP, not the greatest of speed, so she's not going to be great for all areas of this game. But one thing she is good for outside of just Arena is actually dungeon wave clear. She's very strong at that because that A1 is so strong. The A2 is so strong, and their AoE skills, it helps take down those wave minions very, very quickly. And when you're starting out trying to struggle your way up to level 20 in Dragon or Spider or Ice Golem, wherever it is, or Fire Knight, I should say, she's actually very, very good for that. So something to keep in mind if you're going to use her. Number 9 on my list is a Shadowkin champion who was a premier Arena nuker for a significant amount of time there. And I'm talking about Genbo the Dishonored, a really strong champion that can do a lot of damage for you. Now, one of the advantages of Genbo, much like Skullcrown, has a very nice Arena speed aura, right? That's always helpful if you don't have an Arena speed champion. But the big thing with Genbo has to do with his passive abilities, A3 skill. So his A3 skill here places an increased crit rate and crit damage buff on this champion for 3 turns and then grants an extra turn. That means right off the bat, bad. As soon as he takes a turn, he's giving himself better crit rate, better crit damage. And when you can factor in that he's going to get 30% crit rate on top of however else you build him, that means you can use those stats and build more attack, more crit damage on him, so he can hit even harder for you, which is great. And then of course it leads into his A2, which is an AoE ability and has 8% chance of decreasing the duration of all buffs by 1 turn, and this effect cannot be resisted on critical hits. That means, yeah, he's gonna be critting, right? So that is a natural hit. It books up to 100%. It's a very strong ability and can pretty much nuke anybody you're fighting. So those two skills combined are really, really strong. Now, he does have a nice passive ability too. He's immune to a decreased attack debuff, so even if you don't go first, you're not going to be, he's not going to be hitting any weaker. Also, he ignores unkillable buffs when attacking under an increased attack buff. So if you can give him an increased attack buff from, say, oh, I don't know, like an Arbiter, or, even a Yoshi, all of a sudden now he's going to hit, he's harder and hit through unkillable buffs. So champions like Skullcrown that could give you a problem actually won't. So this is one of the reasons why I think he's an incredibly strong champion. On top of that, his A1 is not bad, where he attacks one enemy 2 times and steals increased attack buffs on each hit. So that's a really strong ability there. And they also have a 30% chance of stealing a random buff. That books up to 50% chance. So, and the increased attack steal can't be resisted. So he's going to give himself that increased attack buff pretty much regardless. He's a very, very strong arena nuker champion. Now, he's not the best by any means, but for an epic, the fact that he can play on par with a lot of legendaries is a really good sign, and one of the reasons why he's an excellent champion to get and book and use in your arena squads. Now, number 8 on this list really only makes this list because of one area of this game, and I'm talking about Hydra. And the champion I'm talking about is Inquisitor Shamael, or Ishmael as I like to call him because I can never get his name quite right. But Ishmael is incredibly strong against Hydra, obviously due to his passive ability, which is, pretty much the make or break of this champion. And his passive ability, of course, will each critical hit fills his champion's turn meter by 7.5%, and whenever an ally receives a fear or true fear debuff from an enemy, this skill will instantly remove the debuff and fill the ally's turn meter by 15%. This is incredibly strong. We all know this. When we have that head of torment that gives fear all the time, Shamael is an automatic counter to that head, and he becomes almost essential part of a lot of Hydra teams. Now, the downside is obviously he doesn't bring a whole lot else as far as Hydra goes. He brings some damage, which is good, but other than this, he's not bringing a whole lot, so he's not, maybe the best option, but for a lot of people is a really, really strong option and somebody definitely worth getting. So if you get him, he should be helping your Hydra teams out considerably, especially when the head of torment is active. Now, his A1 has a single hit attack, right, and chance to decreasing duration of a random debuff on the target, which is really strong. And every time an enemy places a debuff on an ally, he uses his skill against that enemy. So he's going to get a lot of counterattacks as a result of that. And that's a really strong ability there. And then, of course, his A2 is really strong. This is the one that actually you can use in a few different areas of this game because it hits so hard. And basically what it is, it's an attack an enemy 3 times and ignores 25% of the target's defense and ignores a further 25% of the target's defense for each buff on this champion. So if you can stack Ishmael with a bunch of buffs, he can ignore pretty much 100% of the enemy defense. That can be really, really powerful and strong. Also plays a true fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy, whatever about that. But this is a very strong hitting skill with a triple hit. So there are some other usage of him. I've seen people be able to use him in arena, though it's been a long time since that happened. I've seen him be used in dungeon bosses, against dungeons and dungeon bosses, although he's not really perfect for that either with his single target skills, but he is very solid against Hydra, mostly due to his passive ability. But I think that actually puts him on this list, and there are definitely some champions that maybe have more utility around the world, but he's so clutch for Hydra, I felt I had to include him. Now, the next champion on the list is Warcaster, and Warcaster is going to kind of fill a niche role here. And honestly, he might be a little bit too high on this list, but because he brings such a unique ability in block damage, I felt I had to keep him on here and keep him this high. And obviously, that's going to come off his A3, where he has a block damage buff for 1 turn. Now, it is on a 4-turn delay, so that means even by himself, he's not going to give you an unkillable team, but being able to block damage for 1 turn is significant by itself. The one thing about Warcaster, though, I think we all overlook is he is viable for other areas of this game, right? He has a crit rate aura for all battles. That's a pretty solid ability. On top of that, he also has a block buffs ability as an AoE. Now, it's not going to be perfect for everywhere in this game, but a 75% chance to land that when booked is still pretty solid on a 3-turn cooldown. And then his A1 steals 2 buffs from the target that he attacks. There are, you know, some real advantages to using this champion in other areas of this game. I do feel like his best place is going to be for clan boss. That's where we're going to use him. And with him, he really opens up a lot of possibilities with teams, but you do need to pair him with somebody else. And that's kind of the downside. So maybe I have him too high on this list, and it's possible maybe he shouldn't even make the top 10 because of his limitations. But when you can, I feel like clan boss is so important. Anybody that makes that area of the game better automatically gets a little bit of a head start over some of the other champions. But yeah, that's why Warcaster's on here. That block damage skill is incredibly good, and if you get him on your team, he might be able to unlock new areas of clan boss for you, which is massive. The next champion I have on my list here, starting at number 6, is going to be Godseeker Aniri. Awesome champion, absolutely insanely good, and I actually really want to put her higher on the list, but I really couldn't do it considering the other champions and how useful they clearly are in certain areas of this game. But Godseeker's incredible and probably one of the best buff extension champions in this game. She has a lot of different abilities, which makes her very usable in a lot of different areas. So we can start off with her A1 ability. It's just a single hit, but it gives increased healing for somebody. That's a pretty solid skill. But her A2 is really where things start to pop off, where you have an AoE attack, heals all allies by 15% of their max HP, and then decreases the duration of all buffs on all enemies by 1 turn, and increases the duration of all buffs on all allies by 1 turn. So you have a buff strip, a buff extension, and an AoE heal with this skill, and it hits hard too. All of her skills hit very hard if you build her up because she's a defensive based champion. Makes her really useful in a lot of areas of this game. Then we go to her A3 skill, which isn't used most of the time because you have to have somebody dead, but if someone is dead, will revive a dead ally with 50% HP and fill their turn meter by 50%, but just as importantly, will reset the cooldowns of their skills. That's a really unique bonus on this revive. Makes her incredibly strong, and as a reviver, very, very unique. So definitely something that we'd like to see. This is a skill that you'll actually see used in places like Arena, which is a little bit different from some of these other champions. She's not just for clan boss, she also can be used for Arena to really good effect. And then, of course, we have her passive ability, which does basically the same thing. It gives you a revive on death on one champion who is about to be killed. Now, obviously, there are going to be some issues with that, right? Like some people can block revive. This will be an issue with that, right? There's some things that will like block buffs with their skill. Like this will be a problem with that. But the fact that you basically have 2 revives on one champion is incredibly, incredibly strong. This also will be activated if someone has like unkillable on themselves. So even if they don't die, they're about to, because they go down to 0 health, this would be would proc on them. There's definitely some like little nuances and issues with the AI as far as this goes, but the fact that you have 2 revives, both on 4-turn cooldowns, is incredibly strong in addition to the rest of her skills. Makes her one of the best champions overall in this game, but she's incredibly good for clan boss, incredibly good for arena, and she's good for basically any dungeon content you might find, Doom Tower, etc. And also, and I don't know if you guys are doing this, but she's really, really good for Hydra with both the buff strip, the buff extension, as well as the healing and the damage that she does. She can be a really strong addition to your Hydra team. Next on the list is Madam Serris. Now, she's coming in at number 4 here, and maybe that's a little too high. Maybe it's a little too low. She's kind of in this in-between spot because she was an OP champion back in the day, really a legendary and an epic skin. She's a little bit lower on my list right now, but she's still incredibly good. But the reason why is I think for 90% of you out there, she's going to be OP, basically unbelievably good, especially for Arena, where she's going to absolutely shine, though she's excellent in pretty much every area of this game. But I think as you get a little bit higher level, she becomes less and less important as there's other champions that can do what she does or similar things and do them at a better job, right? She's an epic though, so she's still pretty OP. Anyway, let's talk about her skills, right? So A1, no big deal, but she places a true fear, with this attack here, and it increases the more debuffs are on the target. Pretty solid ability. It's not a true fear, it's just a regular fear. It's nothing great, but it is what it is. But the big stuff comes with their next skills. A2 ability. Attacks all enemies and has a chance of stealing random buffs from the target. And will place a block debuff on all enemies for all allies for 2 turns if any buff is stolen. It places a true fear debuff for 1 turn on all enemies who have buffs stolen. This is actually really, really strong. This steal chance turns up to a 50% when booked. And if you can get that to land, that can be really positive, placing not only block buff block debuffs on your team, but also true fear on many of the enemies. It'd be really, really strong all the way around. Basically, is a second strip in her kit. You can imagine how strong that is for Arena, where this is her main skill, her A3 ability, where it is a decrease attack and decrease defense debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. And that is huge, in addition to removing all buffs from enemies. So basically, the way you build Madame Serris, you speed tune her so that you don't get cut in, and then as you build as much accuracy as possible on her, she's going to strip the enemy and place decreased defense and decreased attack. So even if they interrupt and attack you, they're doing less damage. And if they don't, then it's a lot easier for you to nuke the enemy wave. This is an absolutely, for many teams out there, an absolutely essential part of it as a setup for your arena nuker. And she's so good at this. Not to mention she has an interesting passive where she places a shield on herself every turn. That's pretty fine. It's nothing spectacular, and a lot of times it can actually cause trouble if you're going against Tormund teams because of, you know, his ability with the freezes and stuff, but she's incredibly good, and this is why she is so high on the list. She is still really good in areas like clan boss, dungeon runs. She's incredibly good at that because she does the same stuff, places decreased defense and decreased attack, and she does those for 2 turns, right? The solid ability, not to mention her buff strips, the very good champion. Okay, then we get to number 4, and this might be a surprise for some of you because I have on my list Urogrim, and I absolutely love this champion. I feel like gets slept on a little bit because was nerfed back in the day. Was way overpowered, then got nerfed a little bit, back down to a normal epic level, but he's still a top tier epic, and it's no wonder why. He's placing a bunch of poisons and a bunch of healing, basically a cross between Steel Skull and Bad Alcazar mixed in one, and it's a really nice champion. So we start off with the A1, right? Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a chance to place poison debuff. When this is booked, it's a 45% chance, which is actually pretty high. If you put Sniper on, it's a 50% chance off that A1 skill. That's pretty significant. A2 ability removes all debuffs from an ally and then heals them by 40% of their max HP. This is a full cleanse and heal. It's a really strong skill. It is on a 5-turn cooldown, can be booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. One of the things I would say, if you're going to play with this champion, you can fully book him. Mine's always fully booked, so it's not a bad thing to do that. But if you book it only to a 4-turn cooldown, it actually will provide you a little bit more flexibility as far as the timing of that skill, because it's going to be gated by the A3 ability anyway, which is, of course, Bizarre Vapors, places 2 poison debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns, and also places a continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. That's massive. That's basically Bad Alcazar, right? 2 poisons, 1 continuous heal on all allies. This is massive. This is the skill that allows Urogrim to potentially solo areas like Dragon and Ice Golems by himself. Now, I haven't successfully done Ice Golem with him. I've tried. Definitely have done Dragon, though, and it's an incredibly strong ability to be able to solo Dragon. I think 25 I can do that with Urogrim by himself. It's a really nice ability. So, unbelievably champion. Like, he heals himself, he places a bunch of poisons, he makes dungeon runs incredibly quick. On top of that, he brings a speed aura, 20% for all battles, which is awesome. This guy is great for clan boss, right? You need healing, you need poisons. He's a great addition for that. He's great for dungeon runs. Like I said, can solo dragons, is incredibly good for ice golems, and just generally good all around. With all those poisons, the multi-hit on the A1, and all that healing is really powerful. And so you can see he's incredibly good on a lot of different areas of this game. Now, he's not going to be great for Hydra, not going to be great for Arena, but for dungeons and for clan boss, he's incredibly good, and I feel that gives him a lot of utility. The fact that as an endgame player, I'm able to use your Urogrim in my dungeon run team says that this guy has a lot of viability. And in fact, all these champions in this top 5 are champions I still use to this day. So that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love this champion. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of debate once we get into the top 3 here over who I have and where I have them, but I think I'm going to have to start here with number 3, Maneater. Maneater is going to be the number 3 champion for me, and I know that's a little controversial because for a long time, he's probably the number 1 champion, because if you can pull a Maneater, you've pulled yourself a clan boss team, and a good one at that. And so he's incredibly valuable. Not to mention, he is excellent in all areas of this game, especially if you're early level and still trying to farm your way up through dungeons, or trying to get your way through arena, he can be incredibly valuable. I know he was one of the first champions I ever pulled on my account, and he was incredibly valuable in me progressing through spiders and through arena and through all the dungeons, really, because he brings so much to the table. Now, his A1 skill, you may think, it's nothing, but it's actually really valuable as you're coming through, because if you can crit, this is going to be a decreased attack debuff on all enemies, even though single target. That's an incredibly important debuff to bring in so you don't take as much damage, and having it, even if it's a single target attack, having that on there with a crit, that's incredibly helpful and not too hard to make happen. So he's really strong ability right there. His A2 is bonkers good. His A2 attacks when an enemy, fully depletes the target's turn meter, fills this champion's turn meter equal to the amount the target loses, which is insane ability right there, right? So deplete the enemy turn meter and fills your own. That means he's basically taking another turn. This is a game changer for things like arena. If you have his accuracy high enough, boy, this is a good skill, because all of a sudden you're stealing their turn meter and being able to go again, which allows you to place his third skill, which is the one that's so great for clan boss, which is his ancient blood. And this is where you place unkillable and a block debuff buff on all allies for 2 turns. One of the rare skills right here, right? Unkillable and block debuff. That's an incredible combination. Now, he does take some damage from that, for sure. So, you know, when you're trying to match HPs in clan boss teams, that can be a little bit difficult, something you have to keep on top of. And it books to a 5-turn cooldown, which is a little bit long. So it's not quite as... it's strangely versatile, but not as easy to use as some of these other champions that we have in this game. But he's incredibly good, and we have so many different clan boss teams that we can use him with. I mean, whether it's the budget unkillable, the double man eater, the bat eater teams, like there's a ton of different clan boss teams that utilize a man eater. Even like we have a man-eater with a tower, or a man-eater with a warcaster, or a hellcat man-eater team, or, you know, a Demytha man-eater team. There's a bunch of different variations on using this skill that allow you to get to an Ultra Nightmare clan boss team, and it's incredibly helpful. On top of that, he hits hard too, so he does damage for you as well. Makes him an incredibly good champion for clan boss. But, you know, the thing I think people sleep on is he's pretty good all around, right? He's going to be very good for dungeons. He's going to be very good for arena, maybe not end game levels, right? But early on, when you're just struggling through things, he can be really helpful with that unkillable ability, with the decreased attack, and with the turn meter skill. So this is one of the reasons why he's number 3 on my list. Why he's not number 2 or number 1, we'll get into right now. Because number 2 on my list, number 1 in my heart, is of course Demytha. An amazing, amazing champion. She does so much for you and makes so many incredible clan boss teams possible. Now, one of the reasons why I love using Demytha here, and I have her ranked ahead of Maneater, is I actually feel like Demytha's more viable in more areas of the game for higher end game players, and I feel like that's important, where once you max a champion, you want to make sure they're going to be useful for the life of your account. And I feel like Demytha checks that box a lot better than Maneater does. Now, Maneater at end game is really only going to be good for clan boss teams, and he's amazing, so don't get me wrong, it's a good usage. But Demytha will get you higher level clan boss teams. In addition, I use her for Hydra a lot, and she's excellent for that. Not to mention, she's still good for things like Arena as far as placing block damage on your team, right? So she still has a lot of different uses in this game. So let's go through her kit, right? Her A1 ability places a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns, right? Place a shield buff on the champion ally with the lowest HP for 2 turns. It's not a big deal. It's not a big whoopity-doo-dah. It's just a A1 skill, right? But what we really want to get into are her A2 and A3 skills. So her A2 ability increases the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn, then decreases the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn, or ally debuffs by 1 turn. So this is both a cleanse and a buff extension. Gotta love that, right? Stun, goodbye. Extending the buffs, heck yes, let's do that. In addition, heals all allies by 2.5% of their max HP, but it's increased by further 2.5% for the duration of all, for each turn added to or removed for the duration of buffs and debuffs by this skill. So the more buffs you have on your allies that are increased, the bigger this heal is. The more debuffs that are reduced on your allies, the bigger this heal is. This can be basically a full heal for things like Hydra. That's one of the reasons why I absolutely love this skill there. I think she's incredibly good as a healer, one of the best in this game. Really, really strong. And on a 3-turn duration, right? Not to mention her A3 ability, which is the one that makes everything work with her for Clan Boss, where she has a block damage buff on all allies for 1 turn and a continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. So not only are you getting more buffs and healing, but you're blocking that damage. And because this book's down to a 3-turn cooldown, you're able to do some incredibly crazy teams with her. I mean, we're talking about some of the best Clan Boss teams that are out there. We're talking about the Myth Air team, the Myth Food team. I think we mentioned you can use Demytha with a lot of other champions, whether that's bringing her into a Hellcat team, or it's bringing her into a Tower team, or with a Man-Eater. There's a bunch of different teams that can utilize Demytha and make them fully unkillable, right? Not to mention extending the duration of buffs makes it so that when you're putting increased attack, crit rate, crit damage on your champions, they stay up for the full fight. And that increased buff duration that she has from that A2 allows us to do things like the Myth Air, the Myth Fu, where we have a speed buff and it's allowed to stay on the champions for the entirety of their turns because that buff is being extended by Demytha here. So she's an incredibly good champion. This is why I have her ranked above Man-Eater. She's not only viable for Clan Boss, but for better Clan Boss teams. She's not only viable for Hydra, but she's one of the better champions for Hydra as well. And so I feel like her versatility lasts longer in this game and is just generally going to have a higher ceiling on it too. So that's why I have her number 2 instead of Man-Eater. Of course, we still have 1 spot left, and I have that reserved for somebody very special. And of course, the number 1 epic Void champion in this game is gotta be Seer, who is absolutely insane and broken, and I love her. She makes every speed team out there really possible and is one of the best dungeon speed champions, Doom Tower speed champions available in this game. And if we look at her kit, we understand why pretty quickly, right? Her A1, no big deal, has a chance to grant her an extra turn. That's a nice little bonus, but nothing crazy. Her A2, increased crit rate on all allies, and a weakened debuff on the enemies for 2 turns. Again, nothing crazy about that. What's really nice is this A3 skill, and really the only one you need to book. She takes hardly any books, by the way. If you notice, she takes, what, 4, 1, that's 5, 7 books total, but it's this A3 skill, which is what it's all about, where she removes all buffs from all allies and enemies, and then attacks them all, and the damage increases according to the number of buffs, and has a 50% chance of placing sleep on all enemies for 1 turn, and a 50% the chance of placing sleep increases by 5% for each buff removed, inflicts less bosses to damage, but this is based off of enemy max HP. So how does this skill work? Basically, all you need to build on your champion is crit damage. Don't need attack, don't need HP, because it's all based on the enemy's max HP. So you just build crit damage on your Seer and max that out as much as possible, and accuracy, because you got to strip buffs. Now the buffs on your allies you don't need accuracy for, you'll strip those right down, but you can also strip down the buffs off enemies, and that can be really, really helpful. And by doing both of those things, you're able to pretty much guarantee a sleep on the enemies, as well as nuking them all the heck and back. So this is how you get those super fast 1 minute, 1.5 minute speed runs on things like Fire Knight or Dragon or Ice Golem, is by using Seer to wipe through the waves in under 30 seconds, and then spend the next minute, 30 seconds to a minute, taking down the boss. And she's incredibly, incredibly strong. One of the best champions out there. And honestly, the most game-changing epic that you can pull for your account. Because once you get her, all of a sudden, instead of running 3-minute dungeon times, you're running 1-minute dungeon times, and you're doing it at 100% success rate. And it absolutely changes your farm rate in this game, which is what it's all about. That gear is what you need. So this is by far, I think I'm hands down on this one. She's the number 1 epic in this game. If you get her, she will change your account more than pretty much any other champion. Legendary, epic, rare, doesn't matter. She's probably going to be the most game-changing champion for your account, period. All right, those are the 10 best epics in the Void category. At least that's what I think. But if you guys disagree, please let me know. I would love to hear it. I'm always interested to hear a little debate on these things. I think she's incredibly good, or I think all 10 of those are incredibly good champions, but there's a bunch I left out, right? I didn't mention Whisper. I didn't mention Runekeeper or Suwai. There's a bunch of champions that are really good. Cardinal, right? There's a lot of options there of champions that I could have named and put in there, but I felt like these were the 10 best options. Obviously, there's going to be some debate, so I would love to hear from you on what you guys think would be your 10 best, or who I left off, or who was ranked too high or too low, as I'm sure there's a little bit of debate within these. But anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe. Until next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.